The rain fell without end. It was just the way of things in the Sundarbans, where the land and water were, old friends. In the small village of Patuakhali, life moved with the rhythm of the monsoon. Children played in the muddy lanes, their laughter a bright sound against the grey sky. The women talked softly as they mended fishing nets, their hands moving with a familiar grace. The men, their faces weathered by sun and salt, guided their small boats through the winding mangrove rivers. Life was simple, it was hard, but it was theirs, a tapestry woven from shared work and quiet moments. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and the sweet scent of jasmine flowers blooming near the huts. One afternoon, the sky turned a furious shade of black. The wind howled like a hungry beast, tearing at the thatched roofs and bending the tall palm trees until they nearly touched the ground. A great roaring sound, louder than any thunder, shook the very foundations of the village. It was a cyclone, a monster from the sea. When the storm finally passed, it left behind a world broken and silent. That was when they saw it. A strange metal bird, torn and twisted, lay half submerged in the flooded paddy fields. And beside it, a man unlike any they had ever seen. He was tall, with hair the colour of straw and eyes as blue as the winter sky. He wore clothes of a strange green pattern, and he was hurt. Fear, cold and sharp, gripped the villagers. Who was this man? Was he a spirit, a demon sent by the storm? The children who had crept closer scampered back, their eyes wide with a mixture of terror and fascination. The elders murmured amongst themselves, their voices low and worried. They had heard stories of foreigners, but they were tales from faraway cities, not their quiet corner of the world. This man, with his pale skin and strange garments, was an intruder from another reality. He looked as lost and broken as their own village, a piece of the sky that had fallen to earth and shattered on impact. They watched him from a distance, unsure what to do. The stranger tried to stand, but fell back with a groan of pain. His leg was twisted at an odd angle, and a dark stain was spreading across his sleeve. He did not look like a demon. He looked only like a man in pain, vulnerable and alone. He looked up and saw the ring of silent faces watching him. He raised a hand, not in threat, but in a gesture that seemed to ask for help. It was a language everyone understood. The silence stretched on, filled only by the drip of water from the broken trees and the distant cry of a lone bird. The village held its breath, caught between the ancient fear of the unknown and the simple human impulse to help another in need. It was Rahim, the village schoolteacher, who broke the spell. He was a man with a gentle heart and eyes that saw beyond the surface of things. He had read books about the world outside their village and knew that not all strangers meant harm. "He is hurt," Rahim said, his voice calm and clear. "We cannot leave him to die." With slow, deliberate steps, he walked towards the fallen man. The villagers watched, their fear warring with their respect for the teacher. Rahim knelt beside the stranger and offered him a simple smile. He pointed to himself and said his name, Rahim. Then he pointed to the man. The stranger understood. "David," he whispered, his voice hoarse. It was the first bridge built between their two worlds. Slowly, the villagers' suspicion began to melt away, like morning mist under the sun. They carried David to the schoolhouse, the only building with a roof that had mostly survived the storm. The village healer tended to his broken leg, using herbs and ancient knowledge. The women brought him bowls of warm rice and lentil soup. They could not speak his language, but kindness needed no words. David would smile his thanks, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners. He learned to say, "Donobad, thank you." And the word, spoken in his strange accent, always brought smiles to their faces. The children, their initial fear forgotten, would peek through the schoolhouse door, giggling whenever he waved at them. David, a soldier whose helicopter had crashed during a relief mission, began to heal. He was a quiet man, but his gratitude was clear in everything he did. He would help the children with their English lessons, pointing at objects and saying the words slowly, tree, river, sky. In return, they taught him their words, Gach, Nodi, Akash. He shared pictures from a worn leather wallet, showing them his family in a land of snow-covered mountains, so different from their flat, green world. They, in turn, told him stories of the Sundarbans, of the Royal Bengal tiger, and the honey collectors who braved the deep forest. They were no longer a stranger and a village, but people sharing the small, important pieces of their lives. Rahim and David spent many evenings talking. Rahim, with his limited English, and David, with his growing Bengali, pieced together their stories. David spoke of his life as a soldier, a life of discipline and danger. Rahim spoke of his dream to build a proper school for the children, a place safe from the storms. David listened, his gaze thoughtful. He saw the resilience and spirit of the people who had saved him. He had come from the sky, a stranger, but he was starting to feel a sense of belonging in this small, waterlogged village. The differences in their skin color, their language, and their pasts seemed to shrink with every shared story and every passing day. The nights in the Sundarbans held their own secrets. After the cyclone, the forest felt more restless. Its unseen inhabitants pushed closer to the village by the floodwaters. One night, a deep, guttural roar echoed through the still air. It was a sound that made the blood run cold, a sound every villager knew and feared. A tiger. It was close, too close. Panic spread like wildfire. The men grabbed whatever they could, sturdy bamboo poles, fishing spears, and old axes. Their faces were grim in the flickering torchlight. The tiger, driven by hunger, was circling the village, its eyes gleaming like embers in the darkness. It had already taken a goat from a pen at the edge of the settlement. David, his leg now strong enough to hold his weight, saw the terror in their eyes. He had faced danger before, but this was different. This was not a human enemy. It was a force of nature, powerful and primal. He saw the fear, but he also saw the courage as the men prepared to defend their homes and families. He knew he could not stand by and do nothing. He remembered something from his survival training. He asked Rahim for help, using a mix of broken Bengali and urgent gestures. He needed empty tins, small stones, and strong vine. The villagers, though confused, trusted him and quickly brought what he asked for. Working quickly under the moonlight, David fashioned a series of alarms. He filled the tins with stones and strung them together with vine, creating a perimeter around the most vulnerable parts of the village. It was a simple trick, but it might be enough to startle the great cat and give them a precious warning. As he worked, some of the younger men watched, their fear slowly replaced by a determined focus as they helped him tie the lines. He showed them how to create a funnel, to guide the animal away from the houses and back towards the forest. He was a soldier again, not with a rifle, but with his wits and his will to protect the people who had become his friends. The roar came again, closer this time. A moment later, a loud metallic clatter shattered the night as the tiger tripped one of the alarms. The sudden, unnatural noise startled the beast. It paused, confused and wary. From the darkness, the villagers let out a great shout, banging pots and pans, adding to the cacophony. The combined noise was enough. The tiger, a creature of stealth and shadow, retreated from the wall of sound and light, melting back into the safety of the mangroves. The night fell silent once more, but it was a different silence now, one filled with relief and a newfound respect. David, the stranger from the sky, had stood with them. He had helped them face the roar in the dark. The day David had to leave came all too soon. A rescue boat, finally able to navigate the swollen rivers, arrived to take him back to his world. The entire village gathered to say goodbye. It was a farewell without tears, but with a depth of feeling that, honestly, words could not capture. The children gave him garlands of marigolds. The elders placed their hands on his head in a silent blessing. Rahim gave him a small, hand-carved wooden boat, a replica of the ones that sailed their rivers. "So you do not forget us," Rahim said, his voice thick with emotion. David held the small gift tightly. "I will not forget," he promised. "I will come back." Years passed. Life in Patuakhali returned to its gentle rhythm, but something had changed. The story of the American soldier became a part of their village lore, a tale told to children on rainy afternoons. The fear of outsiders had softened, replaced by a quiet curiosity. The English words David had taught them were not forgotten. Rahim's dream of a new school was slowly taking shape, built with stronger materials to withstand the storms. The friendship had planted a seed of hope, a belief that the world was bigger and kinder than they had imagined. They often wondered about their friend with the sky-blue eyes, hoping he was safe and happy in his faraway land of snow. Then one day, a familiar boat appeared on the river. A man stepped out, older now, his hair touched with grey, but his eyes were the same shade of blue. It was David. He had kept his promise. The village erupted in joyous shouts. Rahim, now a respected elder with lines of wisdom on his face, embraced him like a long-lost brother. The children who had been small were now young adults, and they greeted him with shy smiles, remembering the kind stranger from their past. David had not come empty-handed. He had returned not as a soldier, but as a builder, bringing with him funds and friends to help construct the new storm-proof school and a small clinic. But a new shadow was creeping over the Sundarbans. The rising sea levels, a silent and relentless threat, were causing the rivers to swell more each year, eating away at the fragile land. The salt water was poisoning the paddy fields, and the storms seemed to grow more ferocious with every passing monsoon. The villagers faced a new kind of enemy, one that could not be scared away with noise and torches. It was a slow, creeping danger that threatened their very way of life, their homes, and their future. David saw the worry in their eyes, the same worry he had seen the night the tiger had come. But this time it was deeper, more profound. The fight for Patuakhali was not over. David saw their new struggle not as a distant problem, but as his own. The bonds forged years ago were not weakened by time, they had only grown stronger. He brought not just money, but knowledge. He worked with engineers and climate experts he had contacted, people who understood the threat. Together, with the villagers' deep ancestral knowledge of the land and its waters, they began to fight back. They worked side by side, a community united against a common foe. They planted thousands of mangrove saplings along the riverbanks, their roots a natural shield against the encroaching water. The project brought everyone together, young and old, men and women. They built raised platforms for their homes and devised new farming techniques for saltwater-resistant crops. David, Rahim, and the village council planned and worked, their evenings once again filled with conversation, not just about stories of the past, but about plans for the future. The younger generation, inspired by David's return and Rahim's wisdom, took the lead. They learned about sustainable engineering and conservation, becoming guardians of their own land. It was a different kind of battle from the one against the tiger, a slower and more patient fight. But it was one they faced with the same courage and unity. The school they built together became a center for this new learning. One day, as they stood on a newly reinforced riverbank, watching the setting sun paint the water in hues of orange and gold, Rahim placed a hand on David's shoulder. "You came from the sky as a stranger," he said softly, "but you have become a root of this village, holding us to the earth." David looked at the faces around him, the children he had taught who were now parents, the friends who had become family, and he knew home. The uniform he once wore, the flag he once served, seemed like details from another life. What mattered was the human connection that tied them all together, an unbroken thread of compassion and shared struggle. The story of Patuakhali and its stranger from the sky became a quiet testament to a simple truth. It showed that courage is not just for soldiers on a battlefield, but is found in the heart of a teacher, in the hands of a farmer, and in the spirit of a community that refuses to give up. It proved that true family is not always born of blood, but is often forged in the fires of hardship and built with the simple bricks of kindness. Across all borders, beyond all differences of language and land, it is our shared humanity, our capacity for compassion and our courage to stand for one another that truly makes us one.